Is it possible? Does Gibson really make the worst guitar necks in the world? Hey everybody, this is Matt and we're at Texas Toast Guitars. Thanks for watching. So, boy, that's a big title and that's a big claim, and I know I'm going to catch all kinds of grief from the guys on the Les Paul forum and whatever other jerk-off forum there is out there that loves Gibson. The fact of the matter is that I love Gibson guitars too. My very, very first guitar that I ever bought was a Gibson SG, and that was back in 1983. My second guitar that I ever bought was a little bit upgraded Gibson SG in 1985. I love Gibsons. And so before you go blah, 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 Gibson's better than you, why would you ever say anything bad about Gibson? Guys, I love Gibson just as much as you do. I bought their guitars, they didn't buy mine. But since I'm a full-time professional guitar maker, I have the luxury of being able to look at guitars from a unique perspective and say, you know what, some of this stuff is cool and some of it maybe not so much. So, so before you jump all over me, you know what, go ahead and jump all over me, I don't care. But we're gonna deep dive today into what makes a Gibson neck maybe not so good. And if you don't like this kind of video, you can go watch our video called "Are Gibson Guitar Necks the Best in the World?" And then you can, you know, get all happy meal about that. But today we're going to talk about some things that I don't like about Gibson necks. I'm going to actually do some neck construction for you guys, and we're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to open our minds, and our world is going to be wonderful. Or not. All right, so enough with the bullshit talk. Let's get started. So a couple of the things that we're going to talk about today when it comes to Gibson neck construction, some of the things that I'm not a big fan of, are very specifically headstock angle and truss rod style. So now this is not a Gibson neck. This is a neck that I am making for someone using the Gibson style of construction. And there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's really good. But there's not a lot right with it either. So one of the things that you'll notice right away is in order to get this angle, we had to use a very thick piece of wood in order to make a one-piece neck. Now, you could absolutely do a scarf joint here, but that kind of gets away from what we're talking about, which is Gibson. Lots of people use scarf joints, including Gibson, and Epiphone uses scarf joints on many guitars. Maybe they even do it exclusively, I don't know. But it takes a lot of meat to make this headstock angle from a one-piece mahogany blank. Now, I realize there's going to be some of you who go, you glued two pieces onto that. Yeah, so does Gibson. So easy there, Tiger. But what we have settled on is we use quite a bit less neck angle, and what that allows us to do is start with a piece that is considerably thinner. So this guy here is, and this is, you know, this is more than you need, but this is easily 3 inches thick, and we use half of that to do our necks. And one of the reasons that we can get away with using 1.5 inch thick pieces of material is because we use half of the neck of the headstock angle that Gibson does. We use a 7-degree headstock angle. So that's actually even less than half of the original 17-degree headstock angles. So what this allows us to do is start with 8-quarter lumber, and it's very easy to locate 8-quarter lumber, and if you can get vertically oriented grain to your fretboard, happy meal for you. If not, you can absolutely do something like this guy here. It's another 1.5 inch thick neck blank. This is actually, this is all maple. This is 3 pieces of standard hard rock maple, this headstock bits glued on, and 2 stringers of torrefied maple. So it might look like walnut, but it's actually all maple. So anyway, yeah, so this would be cool too. And you'll notice we were able to orient the grain so that it is vertical, and we started with 4-quarter flat sawn material and upended it and glued it up nice and made this nice blank. So we're gonna turn a bunch of these guys into neck blanks. Why don't we do that now? So before I cut all these, So before I was cutting these out, I was talking about the advantages of using 8/4 lumber to build necks from. And one thing that I forgot to tell you guys about is why we like to use 8/4, because of the wood savings and what you probably have to do if you're making a Gibson style neck and you want to have vertically oriented grain lumber. So a couple of things. Hardwood is usually sold in quarters. So like if you want 1 inch of hardwood, that's 4/4, 2 inch, 8/4, 12/4 is 3 inch, etc., etc. So if you were to buy a big chunk of 12/4 mahogany, it would, and it was flat sawn, you could upend it and cut it into slabs and get a bunch of vertically oriented grain that was 12/4. Now it's going to be the full 3 inch all the way down then. So that means that you're going to be fairly wide all the way through. Whereas if you use 8/4, you can cut the material down to the widest part of your heel and then add a little bits on to the wing areas of your neck, and you can use a lot less lumber, both width and height. So you'll notice, I mean, we're not using a whole lot. We're going to cut this part down here to be our 7-degree angle, which we're going to get to in a little bit. We're going to talk about the Gibson headstock angle versus our headstock angle. And then this part will get cut off, and then the heel will be here. So we really don't have a lot of wasted material lumber-wise. So guys who go, I like to use scarf joints because you get more yield for, well, yeah, you do, but it also takes more time. So if you want a one-piece neck and you aren't tied to tradition and the 17 or 14-degree headstock angle, which again, we're gonna get to, using 8/4 lumber like we do, you can get lots of angle, plenty of angle, and use a lot less lumber too. Okay, cool. All right, let's go over to the shaper and turn these into neck blanks. Okay, I've got one challenger neck that I have to do. That's this one. And I have 2 of the other necks, the prostitute necks, and I need to switch out my paddles here. So all of my neck templates have alignment pins built into them, and they screw into, or they press into the corresponding holes. This is the back of the neck. So all of these holes that I'm making, whether it be from my pins or from the screws that hold the template firmly in place, will all be ground away when I actually profile and shape the neck. Because I'm so clever, right? Right. Okay. So I got 2 of these necks to do, and then we'll start doing some other stuff. So I got to tell you, there's a little bit of a pucker factor when doing 5-piece necks like this. I had one blow up on me on the shaper one time. I think it was because the woods didn't want to glue up properly, but fortunately this torrefied maple glued up real nice. So no big shake there. Doesn't mean I don't always remember it though. So I could probably do this with just the little indexing pin, but having a couple screws in here, just to be sure, makes me feel better. There is no denying that this Honduran mahogany machines really, really easily. It is like a dream to machine. If you guys are having trouble finding it, check out my buddies Dan and Calvin at Tonewood Experts. They've got it in stock. I actually buy this, their standard neck blanks, and cut them in half. I get 2 necks out of them that way. And man, they are really, really nice. Texas Toast Guitars is brought to you in part by our sponsors, Flipside Music, the great American guitar store. If you're in the Denver area or just online, check out Flipside Music. Dylan Pickups. We use them, you should use them too. Link in the description below and you can save 10%. Maximum Guitar Works. For all your templates and guitar building needs, check out Maximum Guitar Works. Tonewood Experts. All of the guitar woods used here at Texas Toast, including our workshops, come from Tonewood Experts. Check them out and use code TexasToast15 to save a little bit of money. Bitterroot Guitars. We buy a bunch of stuff from Bitterroot, and so should you. And if you use code TXTOAST at checkout, you save 15%. NK Forster Guitars in Queensland, Australia. Check out Nigel's ebook in the description below. And Odyssey Beer Works, the makers of Texas Toast Red, and who knows, maybe something cool coming at you real soon. And finally, I'd like to thank our sponsors, you guys watching, who are Patreon members and who've signed up on YouTube. Guys, if you like content like this, you might want to go over to our Patreon page and consider becoming a member, or you can do the exact same thing by clicking the join button on the YouTube screen right now. Even $1 a month goes a long way to helping us bring you guys cool stuff like this. So thank you to everybody on Patreon and who's joined us on YouTube. All right, we've got our necks are all cut out and looking good. And again, because our neck blanks were only 1.5 inch tall, it was very easy to go over the shaper with a 2-inch blade. You can imagine that in order to get this guy through the shaper, well, one, you'd have to have either a taller blade, or you'd have to do something different. And I'm sure that there's a lot of ways you can do this. What I do is I set this up on the pin router, but you can imagine once it gets taller than it is wide, it has a propensity to kind of do this. So you have to be very careful because these are shorter than they are wide. It glides over the shaper table like butter. So, all right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put our headstock angle in here, which, as I said before, was 7 degrees. The reason that we settled on 7 degrees, landed on 7 degrees, was Chris and I, when we were designing the Challenger model guitar, we started with an 8/4 blank. And remember, it's 8/4, but then it gets surfaced. So it's 8/4 prior to surfacing. So you get 2 sides surfaced. It's about 1 7/8 by the time you get it. And we always like to grind more off so that we absolutely know we have a flat piece of lumber And by the time we worked all that stuff out, we had 1.5 inches seemed like the ideal thickness. But you could get a little bit more thickness out of that, and you could maybe get a little more than 7 degrees, but the fact of the matter is that 7 degrees works great. So Dan Armstrong came up with that in the 60s, and again, I bought his guitars, he didn't buy mine. So if having a 17-degree headstock angle or 14-degree headstock angle or whatever turns you on impresses your friends' kids, then okay. But it is absolutely a couple of, it's got some cons to it, and the only pro that I can think of is it's traditional. So, so let's talk a little bit about the cons associated with a 17-degree neck angle. As you can imagine, once this gets nice and thin, and if there's no volute here, this is a very, very fragile part of the guitar. Now, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know. The Gibson headstock is fairly notorious for breaking. Now, that's not to say that other guitar necks can't break too, but Gibson has a fairly well-deserved reputation of breaking. Not every single one of them is broken. I get it. But as you start to decrease that angle here's one that's ready to go, to 7 degrees, there's a lot less likelihood of breaking. Now, another thing that you can do is you can make it so that you can design your neck angle, not your headstock angle, but your neck angle to work so that your headstock doesn't actually touch when the back of the guitar is laying flat. Or you can, or any number of things. And one of the things you can also do is not worry about it. But there are a number of advantages to using less material, having less of a headstock angle. The shorter the headstock that you have, the more angle that you can get. I suspect that's why Paul Reed Smith uses a 10-degree angle, because he can maximize the yield from whatever lumber it is that he has, whether that starts with 8/4 or 12/4. I think it actually does start with 12/4, but I think he machines it such that he gets the most headstock angle that he can and the maximum amount of yield from each one of those necks, blanks. So, all right, so I'm going to show you guys how we do our 7-degree headstock angle. It's actually really cool, and you could use it with whatever angle you want, depending on how many sign plates you want to have made. So let's go over to the pin router, and I'll show you how it's done. Anyone who's been watching my videos for any amount of time will remember that I often say anything that you can turn into a great big chunk that you can throw away in the scrap wood bin and don't have to turn into powder is much easier to clean up. Hey everybody, a lot of our videos take place here in our workshop. Now this workshop is not exactly conducive to zero echo. It's got a hard concrete floor, the ceilings are 15 feet tall, and there's no padding on the walls so we can clean everything. Remember, we are not YouTube content creators first, we are guitar builders first. And this is the shop where I come and spend 60 hours a week building guitars every single week. So I apologize in advance if you guys don't like the echo. Lots of people don't seem to have a problem with it. If you're one of those guys who has a problem, maybe check out one of those YouTube content creators that happens to be making guitars. The rest of us are going to hang out and build guitars and make YouTube videos second. Okay, the last thing that I want to talk to you guys about that I am not a super huge fan of when it comes to Gibson necks is their single acting truss rod. So if you watched the video where I showed you how to install a single acting truss rod, we used to use these rods a lot and they work pretty well. But they're a very basic setup. So they call them a single acting rod because they only do one thing. And here is kind of what a Gibson rod looks like. It is a 3/16 piece of steel, and it has on one end a stop to keep the rod from moving. This is not what Gibson uses, but you can imagine this would work too. This would go in the hole at the end of the neck, the rod would go in, and then what happens is you have one tightening nut, and as you tighten the nut, it acts on the rod. Now, I've been catching some flack lately from people who say that the rod does not need to be curved. I assure you, the rod needs to be curved. I don't know how many times I have to tell people this, but I'll be able to die a happy man one day if everyone realizes the rod has to be curved to be the most effective rod it can be. Now, somewhere out there, there's someone who's feverishly typing because they've spent time on the Les Paul forum and they say stuff like, before blah, blah, blah year, thousands of Gibsons were made with a rod that was properly angled and blah, 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 blah. Everybody in the world uses a curved rod when they use a single acting rod now. That's a manufacturer. Anyone who doesn't use a curved rod does so because they're terrified of making a curved slot. So even Gibson stopped using the straight rod because it didn't work. So anyway, yeah, so in order for the single acting rod to work properly, it has to be curved. How about this? Can we agree that in order for the single acting rod to work the most efficiently, it has to be curved? I mean, it's true that it does have to be curved in order to work right, but some people will just never learn. Okay, enough with that. No, it's not enough. The rod has to be curved. So if you're using the single acting rod, that is, it works, but it's kind of limited in what it can do and how much it acts. A more contemporary rod is something like this. This is a two-piece rod, and it has a number of advantages, not the least of which is it's easy to install. It can go in a flat slot. Boom. It doesn't have to have a piece glued back in on top of it. Boom. It doesn't have to be curved. Boom. You don't have to figure out this funky washer thing. It's ready to go as is. Now there's lots of versions of this with lots of different, adjustment points. And frankly, going back in time and using the old school rod versus the, like I said, the more contemporary double acting rod is a lot like trading in broadband for dial-up. I don't know. I mean, if you really, again, if you want something traditional, cool. If you want something that does what a truss rod needs to do, this is the way to do it, and you can get results fast. And if you have a pin router, you can get them really fast. So, of course, I'm all jigged up to make necks using this style rod. So why don't we take a look at a couple of times where I just plop these in, and you'll see how fast and easy it is. Well, that was so fun and easy. We should do another one. Oh, Maple, why can't you be more like mahogany? Okay, well, that should about wrap it up, y'all. I've talked a little bit about, why some of the things that I don't really care for on Gibson necks, and I'd like to hear what you guys have to say too. When I made that video that was our Gibson necks, the best in the world, some people said, yeah, I love Gibson, and some people said, hell, Gibson doesn't even make the best necks in Nashville. So, I don't know, but I think there's plenty of room for everybody to get along and buy whatever guitar you want and build whatever kind of guitar you want. So, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I hope that I answered a bunch of questions about why we don't make necks exactly like they do over at Gibson, and I hope you enjoyed this video. So until next time, this is Matt at Texas Toast, reminding you that if you're so smart, start your own YouTube channel. That's what I did. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you next time.